Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm going to give it a little bit to let things get some more folks in here. I got approved for my Vietnam eVisa. So that visa starts on July 8th, which is a month and a day. So a month from tomorrow, I should be flying to Vietnam, to Da Nang from here in Bangkok. Um, I'm gonna book a hotel. I haven't done it yet. I'm gonna book a hotel next to the airport for the night before, and then I can catch a morning flight over to Da Nang. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing something new. It was really a good feeling to get that tonight, to get that approval tonight. Um, I just had to add my middle name to my first name on that application. And that's something to keep in mind when you are applying for your Vietnam visa, is that you need to include your middle name uh, next to your first name in your application, because Vietnam, they look at your first name as the combination of your first and middle name. And you'll need to do that if you fly domestically in Vietnam too. So I'll probably be flying from Saigon, or from Da Nang to Saigon, and flying out of Saigon to my next destination. And so when I fly from Da Nang to Saigon, when I book that ticket, I'm going to have to book it with my first and middle name. That way it's proved. And yeah. It's been a hot and muggy day in Bangkok today. It rained a little bit and then it stopped. But yeah, I went out, and while they were cleaning my room, I went and just kind of walked around Saton, visited the base of the Mahanakan Tower, which is the tallest. I think it's the tallest building in Bangkok right now, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's like my favorite building. It's also a Ritz-Carlton residence, so really a luxury building, way above my pay grade, but really a beautiful building nonetheless. I've been watching this interesting criminal defense attorney, a Filipino American guy based in Houston, Texas, called Jayoma. And I watched this YouTube channel, Tyler Oliveira. And so he interviewed Jayoma, or he did like a video with Jayoma yesterday. And it's just so interesting to see how that guy works and how he operates. And certainly a controversial figure, but also charismatic. Feel free to chime in. Anybody watching, any thoughts or questions, comments you have, any travel plans you have coming up. I've got another interview on Monday with a company and based back in California, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't, in this job market, I have low expectations, but it's nice to get that interview practice and be kind of warmed up, and get some practice in there. Even if it doesn't go my way, then it'll be nice to just have be prepared for that. But kind of a slow week this week in Bangkok. I've been hitting up the mangosteen trucks. I found some mangosteen trucks in Saton near my apartment, and they have really high quality mangosteen at the same price as the mangosteen vendors at Mahanak Market. So that's really nice, and the quality is really good. The best quality for fruit. If you are buying fruit here in Bangkok, don't hesitate to buy from the trucks. They are typically direct from the farmer, and the quality is great. With mangosteen, it can be hit or miss. If you go to not the best markets, you'll get some busted mangosteen that are kind of like rotten yellow. They got this yellow slimy kind of thing going on. But the ones in the truck, almost all of them are great condition. Like one or two underripe ones, but yeah, most of them are great. I can eat so many of them in a row, and it's they're tasty. I'm also doing some tentative planning, like for after my time in Vietnam. If you don't know already, I am looking at going to the Philippines. Assuming I don't get a great job offer back in California while I'm in Vietnam, then I am going to be flying to the Philippines, and I'm really looking forward to that. Maybe even a bit more than Vietnam, because I have a bunch of friends over there that want to meet up. E-friends, online friends, people I've met through the internet, people I don't know in person yet, but that'll change hopefully on this trip. And I've already been talking to my buddy who lives down there in Mindanao, and he's wanted to introduce me to all of his friends. And he's shown me a little bit about what they do just hanging out on their slow days. They like to go fishing up in the mountains. They like to they go to like these farms and they pick fruit. Like it's a beautiful paradise. I'm a little bit nervous about Vietnam, if I'm going to be honest. I've read that like 95% of tourists don't return to Vietnam. This isn't to slight Vietnam, but I've heard that you really want a lot of travel experience before you go there. So I'm glad that I'm fairly well traveled at this point. I wouldn't call it a place you should go for your first country abroad. I think places like Thailand are going to be a lot easier for you. But if you're somebody, wow, we've got 4 people all of a sudden. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, I'm looking at Vietnam as a little bit more of a challenge, because it's, of course, English is not prevalent in Vietnam. It's got some edges to it, if that makes any sense. Hey, Solar Transient, welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight? I'm just drinking some an electrolyte beverage. What's up? How's it going in your world? So yeah, with Vietnam, I've also heard just from friends like, hey, be careful over there. Oh, well, thank you so much. I recorded a video today. I've been kind of a down mood, but just in terms of thinking about leaving Thailand, I don't really want to leave Thailand, but I'm also trying to be optimistic about what Vietnam will bring and what the Philippines will bring as well. But with Vietnam, it's it's got a bit of an edge. Of course, there's some safety challenges in Saigon and in Hanoi as far as like thefts go. I've heard you really got to be careful about your property there. You also are going to want to be careful if you go to Vietnam about scams. Now, I know some people feel like, it's just $1, it's just $5. What does it matter? But it can really add up. And it's also like discouraging. It feels a little bit humiliating. I don't know anybody that likes to get scammed. So it's one of those places that I don't think it's as organic to go to Vietnam as, say, Thailand or even the Philippines. It's a place where you have to do some work to get that visa. You have to put some work in to, fill out that form correctly. Of course, you pay also for that in advance. Cool, very cool. You're going to Da Nang soon. Well, hey, Solar Transient, if you want to meet up, if we're there at the same time, happy to meet up. I don't think I've met up with any of my subscribers yet. So you might be the first subscriber I get to meet up with, which would be really cool. I think Jake's over there too right now, and I asked him about that. He says he plans to be there for a couple more months. So I'm hoping to meet up with Jake as well. If you're rewatching this, Jake, it'd be cool to meet up, grab some Vietnamese coffee or some banh mi or something like that. Always blows my mind that 1,500 people actually subscribe to my channel. So like I said, I'm not afraid. Like, I've been to places that I've perceived to be rougher than Vietnam. If you want to talk about just sheer safety, like in Colombia, I did not feel safe. Based on what my friends there told me, I didn't have any issues. But like when I started talking to my friends that are locals in Colombia, they're like, yeah, you need to be careful around here. And same in Mexico. My friends in Mexico are like, hey, you need to be careful around here. I never had any issues. I don't know if it's that I blended in. I had also several people tell me, you look Colombian, you look Mexican, which was kind of funny to me. I did get a kick out of that. So I didn't have any issues in Latin America. But so those are more over the top. Even like, when I went to Cambodia, I had some expat friends mention, hey, it's not safe. But with Vietnam, like it's a bit more over the top. I mean, it was, a country involved in a war. I know like my grandfather served in that war on the American side. And that, it's got like, it's got some challenges. Vietnam's got some challenges. So I'm looking forward to it, though. I think it'll be really interesting. I think I'll learn a lot about the history, the culture, the people. Like, it's going to be my well, no, technically it won't be. It'll be another country in the Sinosphere. So, like, Thailand is more influenced by India. You see that with a lot of Thai people having Sanskrit influenced names, but Vietnam is much more influenced by China. So it'll be really interesting in that way. I'm looking forward to checking out some of the industry. So there's a ton of industrial growth over there. Like I mentioned this a few times, but these were actually assembled in Vietnam. These are the Apple AirPods. I'm sure people have seen plenty of people wearing them. I'm sure some of you even have a pair or two. But yeah, these were assembled in Vietnam. Apple is expanding their presence over there. What else? Of course, they've got this. There's like a VinFast is the automobile manufacturer. They're doing EVs. So getting to have some exposure to that will be really cool. I don't know where these factories are. I don't know if they're near Saigon, near Hanoi, or if they're in like smaller industrial towns away from the population centers. Da Nang seems like more like a tourist town. So I don't know if I'm going to see anything like that in Da Nang. I'm sure I'll see like Apple, stores selling Apple products in Da Nang and stores, selling VinFast vehicles in Da Nang. But yeah, as far as seeing the industry, I don't know if I'll get access to that just from being in the bigger cities. I'm a city guy. It's just what I'm used to. So I don't spend as much time in rural areas. I tend to just get kind of, I don't know, stir crazy is the word. That's a phrase we use in the South. But I think Vietnam will be really interesting. And it's going to be very different from what I'm used to. I have some exposure to the Vietnamese American communities, but not a ton. And so, and of course, a lot of those folks, like, they see themselves as American. My friends that are Vietnamese American have not ever mentioned going back to visit. I think they feel, depending on the country that an American comes from, they have different feelings. Like I know with India, a lot of my Indian friends do go back to India, not necessarily regularly, but they've been back several times since moving. Whereas I never really heard about that sentiment from Vietnamese Americans. So it may be less common. I can't say for certain, but yeah, solo transient. When are you going to arrive in Da Nang? You said you're going to embark to Da Nang soon. Just curious, like when you plan on landing there. I am looking forward to some beach vibes again because, like, I was in Krabi. Let's see, when was I in Krabi? I was in Krabi in April. Yeah, I was in Krabi for April, for the month of April, and it was nice to be like in the beach setting and just have the beauty of the ocean there, and like there's something like humbling about it, and there's also something relaxing about being by the ocean, being by the beach. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that with Da Nang. I've seen a lot of vloggers in Da Nang showing like being at the ocean, and it's just such a beautiful view. Yeah, it's just such a beautiful view. Probably late July or early August. And why don't we pull up? I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a map here because I think that's fun when I do that for you guys. More fun than my background. Okay, so this is where I'm staying in Bangkok, general area. Da Nang, here we go. Yeah, so this is where I'm going to be headed in Vietnam. Solo Transient says probably late July or early August. Well, definitely send me an email, Solo Transient, or comment on the content I make over there. I know I've been a little bit slow to upload. I've had a lot of stuff to do just in terms of like getting caught up on my taxes, ordering some stuff. I've been doing some recording, but some of the stuff hasn't turned out as well as I would have liked. Just the audio it can get, Bangkok can be a loud city. So sometimes it's kind of hard to make record the content in the way that I want to record it, because sometimes I find videos where I'm just sitting in here, like it's just kind of sterile. And I know you can intersperse clips over it, but it just doesn't feel as present in my mind as like me recording when I'm out in the city. I think that's just like more fun for you guys. And yeah, I think the numbers speak to that as well. Christopher says, congrats, Alex. What was the turnaround time on the eVisa? Yeah. So I wanted to do a stream earlier this week, but like I said, I just got caught up, on being busy on some stuff. But I actually got denied. So my first application for it was denied. And the reason being for that is I did not include my middle name on the application. So I had to actually resubmit my application. So I got, let's see, I got my rejection email last Friday, and then I think Tuesday, I immediately Googled it, right? I immediately looked it up. I'm like, why did I get denied? And I looked it up, and they're like, yeah, you got to include your middle name on there. Reddit is super helpful for that, by the way, finding these kinds of weird visa answers. They're, of course, not a legal advisor or a lawyer, but some of the insight they provide is helpful. So I resubmitted Tuesday afternoon, and I got with the corrected name on there. And then I got the notice this evening that that they approved it. And so that was really cool. I was a little bit nervous because I've heard of some people getting it rejected like a couple times. And so this time was great. I opened up the email. They're like, your visa has been approved. So what I'll have to do, so that took 3 days, so 72 hours. That may be increased a little bit. Like if you apply, say, on like a Thursday, I imagine then probably wouldn't be till Monday that you get it. I don't know if they work weekends or not as far as the visa processing people in Vietnam, but that's for 90 days. So I'm valid from July 8th until October 6th. And my lease on this apartment runs up July 7th. So when this lease runs up, I'll go downstairs with my backpack, all my bags packed. I'll get my deposit back, 12,900 baht, about $350 US. And then I'm probably going to do a little bit of shopping. I want to get some new shoes before I go to Vietnam. And I may get some other things, just like pick up a few things before I head to Vietnam. Then I'll go get a hotel. I haven't booked my flight to Vietnam yet because I just got that notice like a couple hours ago. But I'll probably fly out of Dam Muang just because, that's just, I'll just fly out of Dam Muang. And then I'll get a hotel though right beside it, like right around it. There's hotels and Airbnbs all around Dam Muang. And then I'll stay there overnight and then just head over to the airport first thing in the morning. I'll probably, the flight I'm looking at will land in Da Nang around 11:30. Now I have heard Vietnam customs and all that can be time consuming. So I've heard of some people, and this probably applies more to the bigger airports like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon. But I've heard it can take like an hour and a half to get through the airport security. So I'll be there probably until like 1 p.m. And then around 1 p.m., I'll be able to hire a Grab taxi and head to my accommodation. So after I book my flight, I'll probably book it after this stream. Then I'll book my accommodation in Da Nang. And then I'll be sorted out for the first month. I'll know how I'm getting there. I'll know where I'm staying. And I'll be able to worry about other things like making content and all that great Vietnamese food I'm going to have. And I haven't been drinking coffee. I actually quit coffee a few months ago, but I'll probably have some in Vietnam because it's a coffee producer and they they're famous for their coffee, including their egg coffee. I'm wanting to pull up egg coffee here. Yeah, so this is the Vietnamese egg coffee that I've been hearing about. And it may seem a little bit strange, like, when I first heard about it, I was like, egg coffee. I don't know how good that sounds, but I like coffee and I like eggs, but do I like them mixed together? But I've heard it's sweet. Um, and normally I don't like cloyingly sweet stuff, but I'll try it once, I'll see how it is. I might like it, I might not like it, but it looks artistic. They've got this, I don't know if that's, grounds that they put a little bit of grounds on top or maybe cocoa powder. Let's see the recipe here. So let's see here. Okay, so it came from France. It's kind of a French import in origin. They're not really talking about what the topping is on it. But yeah, it doesn't, it does look like it's got the black coffee and then the creamer, or not, it doesn't look like it. Sorry, it doesn't have creamer in it. So that'll be interesting. I'm normally not a fan of black coffee, but I'm down to try something new. Your thoughts on slow travel accommodations in Southeast Asia? Do you prefer Airbnb or Agoda? That's a great question, Christopher. Um, I kind of look at it like if it's for short term, like less than a week, I prefer hotels. At the week to month range, I feel that you do get discounts with Airbnb that are helpful to knock the price down a bit. You also get a little bit more variety. Like with hotels, there's some level of limitations on them. Like a few of the things I've noticed with hotels that can be challenging, like for longer than just a few days, is some of them in Southeast Asia, they may not have a desk attendant. I know, like here at my condo building, we have security here that's here like 20 hours a day, but there's this time from like 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. where it seems like there's a lapse, maybe a few hours where there's nobody here. So like my key card for my place here broke. And fortunately, it's 9 o'clock, well, it's 10 o'clock, around 10 p.m. This happened an hour or two ago. But I went downstairs and was able to get the key card replaced. So that's kind of tricky. When I stayed in Phnom Penh, the hotel owner he would pull down the gate because they have these big heavy metal gates, and he'd pull it down at like 1 a.m. and then he wouldn't open it up until he got up the next morning at like 7 or 8 a.m. And so if you're a night owl, which sometimes, like, I'm not a real partier, but I like to just go wander and do night walks. It's kind of a nice, comforting feeling to just go walk through a city in the middle of the night. And that was kind of disconcerting. Like I did stay there for a week in Phnom Penh, or a couple weeks, because I came back and stayed there again at a later date. But to know like, hey, there might not be anybody here in this 6 or 7 hour window, that's stressful, right? If you want to go out and hang out, meet up with friends, or just go out and wander. So that's where having an Airbnb where I've got a key access and I can come and go whatever hour I want, I really like that flexibility. And then at the month-long stay, hotels can kind of wear on you. Like when I went to Latin America, I lived in hotels for about 6 months, and the transient nature of them, having people constantly coming and going, not getting to really know your neighbors. Like, I don't know. I think hotels are great for like 1 to 6 days. And then anywhere from 7 to 30 days, I prefer an Airbnb. But really at the 30 days or more mark, if I can get a rented condo like I'm in right now in Bangkok, that's really nice, because then you're in a more of a long-term building. You build up a bit of a rapport with the people working there. You get a better rate. You also get some amenities, like your room's going to be a bit bigger. You might have like a kitchenette. You have some nice little things that can can make the experience better. I've got a fridge here too, which some of the hotels I've stayed in have not had fridges, or they have like a mini fridge that may be kind of low to the ground and maybe a little bit hard to work with. But here I can show you my fridge is taller, so it's more of a medium-sized fridge, and that's really nice for having some like cold water when I get back from a hot day in Bangkok or even a hot evening in Bangkok. And I can just walk over there, grab an ice cold water and cool off. But yeah, I hope that answers your question, Christopher. Agoda is awesome, by the way. I do like Agoda a lot. I'm actually starting to look at them more for pricing out flights and things like that, because with Agoda, I can actually pay with my Thai bank account. And that's a really seamless experience. I like it better than using my American cards because some of my cards have expired since I've been in Thailand. I'm going to need to sort out getting them mailed to me. And knowing I have more of a local option is super convenient. Solar Transient says, egg coffee is good, but it's more of a dessert than a drink. Okay, that's good to know. It is a little bit confusing to hear it's a dessert, though, because I think of dessert as more of like an evening thing or a midday thing. And like coffee really wakes me up a lot. So it might be one of those things I have to have with breakfast, because the caffeine, it has like a 24-hour half-life. And I notice when I drink coffee, like sometimes even in the morning, if it's strong enough, it will make it hard for me to sleep at night. Even if I go and work out, like even if I get a hard workout in, then coffee is just a really strong stimulant for me. And I haven't been drinking it for several months either. So yeah, it might be one of those things I have in the morning with like a pastry, some kind of bread. Not the healthiest, but a nice treat. Latin America. I did a tour of LATAM back in late 21, Mexico, Panama, Colombia, Peru, and Uruguay. How was that, Christopher? What was your favorite? What were some of your highlights? I want to hear more about your Latin America trip. It's awesome. I mean, I love it. Like, I think Latin America is awesome. It's certainly less of a culture shock coming from the United States than coming here to Southeast Asia. The way the cities are lined up is super familiar to me. Of course, Spanish I found to be very easy to learn coming from English. It's, I mean, Latin America is awesome. And Peru, I think, is probably my favorite of those places. But I think they're all different flavors of the same awesome thing. Next time I go, I'd like to make it down to Argentina. It's really far, right? So it's like almost like going to Asia, because you got to fly to Miami or Houston, like Texas or Southern Florida, and then do another like 8-hour flight. You're literally going from like the top of the continent to the bottom of the continent. If you're going to like Buenos Aires, or Ushuaia is even really much further south. And then, of course, if I did a Buenos Aires trip, I'd make it over to Montevideo and Uruguay, because you just take a ferry. I think it's like a 3 or 4 hour ferry. And a lot of people, it might not even be that long. It may be only 2 hours. But a lot of people do that as a day trip from Buenos Aires. And Mexico is always fun. Like, Mexico to me is so convenient. To me, sometimes it doesn't even feel like going to another country, because last time I went to Mexico, I drove down to the border in South San Diego, like the Ojai Mesa area, Chula Vista. And then just like I took a bus. The parking had a shuttle to take you to the border. And then you just like walk over and grab a cab. I overpaid on my cab a lot when I did that. So if you can get like a Airalo or some kind of SIM card that activates automatically, I didn't take it to the more populous part of that border. I took it to the Otay Mesa area, where it looks kind of sketch and it's not there's not any businesses there. So that was what threw me off whenever I crossed the border to Mexico, was that I crossed over. There's like nothing there. There was like a restaurant and like a clothing store, but like there was no convenience store that could sell me a SIM card where I could activate and immediately be online. So I jumped in a random cab I found, and he definitely overcharged me. So yeah, if you can help it, try to go to the more, if you go down to Mexico from the United States, go to the more populated part of the border rather than like the less populated part. Yes, quite the trek. I was in Montevideo for a bit, but it wasn't my favorite in Latam. Yeah, I've heard mixed stuff about it. Like I've heard it's not really a lot going on. It's kind of a slower pace. It's not really a big city, especially by Latam standards. I think the population of Montevideo is like 1.5 million. I think the population of Uruguay is around 3 million. So if you're coming from like a Mexico City or like a Bogota or like a Lima, then it may feel like a bit of a small town by comparison. Like I was shocked at how big Lima is because it's not readily apparent when you are there that it's such a large city. Like because the districts are so divided and like so different from one another, it felt a lot like LA to me. And the weather. I mean, the weather in Lima, I don't know how the weather is in Montevideo. The weather in Lima can be kind of a downer. It's like overcast about half the year, cloudy. It's weird to be in Latin America where I think people think of it as tropical or like, like Colombia is very sunny. Outside of Bogota, Bogota is another one of those kind of cloudy and rainy cities. But nonetheless, like I enjoy Lima a lot. If I could go back to one city I've been to in Latin America, it probably would be Lima because the food scene there is like the best in the world. I still think about the food in Lima. Like it was shocking to me to experience all the different things that I experienced there because you have kind of the overcast weather and you're reminded of Seattle. And Seattle's like an okay food city, but then you get down to Lima and it's mind blowing. Like even there's this place I used to go for burgers and just your basic hamburger, like I think it was 12 soles, around $3. And really enjoyed that spot. Not as much of a late night city. And it may have been because I went there also in 2021. But when I went to Bogota, I was talking to my local friends and they were like, yeah, normally Bogota has like a wild party scene. And back then I was more of a partier. But they were like, right now it's just slow. I mean, it's, there's not a whole lot going on. So you'll have to come back to Bogota if you want to have a party. Christopher, would you go back to Latin America? I'm curious, like if you go back in the future, would you go back? Would you visit Brazil or Chile or Argentina? Those are the three big ones that you didn't mention. And I'm just kind of curious if you're interested in those places. More graffiti in Montevideo than any other place I visited. Yeah, graffiti can be kind of a downer. I mean, I get it's part of the landscape and it's how people express themselves, but it can also give the city any city a kind of a blighted look. I used to work in Oakland, California, and Oakland is covered in graffiti, and it doesn't help the reputation of Oakland at all to have so much graffiti there. I understand there's greater issues at play, and there's a lot of probably young men that have too much free time on their hands, but it's not the most welcoming look. If you're a traveler and you see lots of graffiti, usually you don't get a great feeling about it. Actually, Christopher says, I liked Bogota a lot. Yeah, Bogota, I liked it a lot too. Like I stayed in the north part of the city, Usaquén. What else? There's the popular neighborhoods, and we can pull up Bogota here, actually. So I was staying up here, Usaquén, and then also like around Parque El Virrey. A lot of embassies around here. And the embassies are just really cool looking. Like I've always thought of embassies as cool looking buildings, but it was wild to see the Chinese embassy there, being so far away from China. It was also, I also thought the Japanese embassy looked really cool. I think I also saw the Ecuadorian embassy there, which was interesting because Ecuador is a neighbor of Colombia. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I mean, the parks are beautiful. I found the people in Bogota to be, most of them to be pretty friendly. more so than Medellin. Like I felt like the people were nicer in Bogota overall. Maybe just because I had local friends in Bogota that I didn't have in Medellin that could introduce me to other local people. But yeah, I liked Bogota a lot. It's just it reminded me of Seattle a lot. I would go back to Bogota, great food, and I found that people were mostly warm and friendly. I stayed in La Candelaria near El Centro. Okay, so we'll pull up, or we can just scroll down here. Well, I'll just type it in. Yeah, so this area, it's really close to Montserrat. I think Montserrat. Here it is. Yeah, super convenient area, touristic. Uh, I had a great meal down there. There was, I think it was like a pork dish that was really, it may have been a beef dish, but it was really tasty. It was huge, and I liked it a lot. They also have a lot of like different vendors down there, so you can get clothing and yeah, really convenient area for sure. Yeah, when I went down there, we took cabs because my buddy said they've just been having some challenges with. I think the bus drivers union has pushed back on some of the public transportation development in Bogota. But the architecture is gorgeous. Like Bogota to me had such underrated architecture. I saw some really cool skyscrapers there. I can't think of the name, but there's one like not too far from La Candelaria that I walked around the base and got some great shots. Take get us show people a sense of the city. Yeah, it's got the beautiful colonial architecture. That's one thing I've gotten a little bit tired of traveling and living in big cities is the pigeons. I saw them a lot in San Francisco. I see them a lot here in Bangkok, and then as you can see, they're prevalent in parts of Bogota. I had this reminds me. I was doing some filming, and I had a couple of police officers stop and question me a bit when I was in Bogota, and I asked my friend about it later because I even showed him like, hey, just doing some stuff for YouTube. I think the buildings here are beautiful. They're like, oh, that's cool, and I showed them. They were like, can we see your YouTube? And so I showed them like the front of my channel or the top of my channel. They're like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I asked my friend about it later. He's like, oh yeah, you were over by some military buildings, and that's why they came up and stopped you. But of course, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. So they were super friendly. Like all the stuff I've heard is like, don't talk to them and this and that, but they were super nice to me. How did you feel about the altitude, Christopher? Did you was the altitude hard for you to adjust to going to Bogota? Because it's pretty high up there. I think it's at like is it 8,600 feet, almost 3,000 meters. It was mind blowing when I flew from Medellin to Bogota because you're flying like through the mountains. I mean, I remember looking out the left side of the plane and seeing like the mountains were really close, much closer than I would have thought is commonplace, close to Plaza Bolivar and the walking street. Yeah, I agree. The photos don't do it justice. It's a gorgeous city, and you don't get the full sense of it unless you are actually down there in the city. Okay, so this is one of those towers I was talking about right here. And you can't see it super well, but like they lit this one up like the Colombian flag. And yeah, beautiful city. the altitude hit me the first few days, but I still did a lot of walking around. What a trooper. Yeah, that's it's something you got to adapt to, but after you get used to it, it's an incredible city. I was super impressed by it, just wandering around. I was worried about safety. I didn't have any safety issues. I don't know if it's because I dressed down or if I look like a local, but I explored a lot, like from the north of the city to the south, and it felt less sketched out than Medellin. I mean, I enjoyed both cities a lot. I wish I'd spent more time in Bogota. I stayed at a hostel in a private room, and this was at the Selena. I can pull that up after we look at some more of these photos, but yeah, it's stunning. I mean, it just really threw me off because I wasn't expecting overcast weather, but I got used to it. The malls are super convenient in Bogota as well. I got a hard drive at one of the local malls. My buddy helped negotiate the price a bit, which was nice. We'll pull up Selena. Yeah, I think this was the one I stayed at. And that actually looks like identical. That may have been the room I stayed in. It looks just like the room I stayed in. Super comfortable, super cozy. The temperatures were perfect. Like, I don't remember them needing to run a heater or an air conditioner because the blankets were thick. And then, it's kind of a cool weather city, not cold, but just kind of chilly. And I loved it. I felt great in Bogota. I had a great time, and having a local friend there made it that much better. And staying here and at the Parque de la 93, like, you're close to a whole lot of cool stuff. I remember seeing a lot of cool cars up here in Usaken as well. Like when I'd walk north from my place and really enjoyed it a lot. Here's the Unicentro Mall. Super modern, upscale. Love the architecture. North of the El Dorado. Huh. Very cool. I didn't go bowling. I wish I knew about the bowling. Let's see, I'm gonna back up though a little bit. You mentioned El Dorado. Oh, okay. This might have been it. This is near La Candelaria. And it does have a little bit of that old Western vibe, or even maybe that Mexico vibe with the brown and red brick. The red brick motif is super common throughout the city. So, like up where I was staying in Usaken, you see these red brick buildings everywhere, and it's utilitarian and it also looks cool. I did see tons of security, like when in the nice area I was in. I think due to some past challenges they still have a lot of security, but I thought it looked really cool. And at the time, I was like not a night owl at all, and so I didn't get as many of these city lights views as I would have liked. Compared to when I was in Medellin, I was staying up a bit later in Medellin, and when you come down, you like from the airport, you're like winding through the hills and you see the city in front of you. There's a famous video too, if you ever get the chance to look up, of Medellin. People, they actually close these like highways, these elevated highways, and people go like rollerblading through the over the hills and stuff. It's really a beautiful look. I know you're in Indonesia right now, Christopher. Have you thought about, are you have any plans coming up to travel elsewhere in Southeast Asia? Are you more in a chill time right now? My buddy from Colombia is in Portugal right now. He actually, when I was when I was in Colombia a few years ago, he was like, "Man, I got to get to Portugal," and so He's actually there right now. I don't know where he's at in Portugal. I should ask him about that. I did reach out to him. It's like, how's it going? He's like, oh man, I'm loving it. Getting used to it. He had plans back then to move to Portugal, so he felt like there were opportunities for him, unique opportunities as a yoga teacher to go and work up there. And so I think that's his plan, is to teach yoga in Portugal. He's done some yoga retreats in like Barranquilla and other parts of Colombia, but he just felt like he would have some unique opportunities in Portugal. Christopher says, I love the cafes, and the transient guy squatted and went to the restroom in front of us. The lady told us that happens a lot in that area. Oh, that's unfortunate. I love the cafes too in Bogota. I felt like they were super underrated. I would actually just go out wandering in the city and find cafes. So I would look for places that locals were eating, and those were my favorite places to eat in Bogota, when I would just happen upon a local spot that they serve like coffee and some meat and some kind of bread for breakfast. Fantastic. Can't go wrong there. I was super impressed by the cafe scene there. And the coffee was good too. They grow a lot of coffee beans in Medellin, or around Medellin, in the coffee region. And a lot of that coffee gets transported straight to Bogota. So yeah, I'm so glad you enjoyed that. And sorry about that negative experience. I've definitely, unfortunately, common in other cities in the Americas as well, like in San Francisco, near where I used to live. And yeah, I've heard that that area can be challenging. Like La Candelaria can have some issues at nighttime. My buddy said it's a whole city at night. He's a local, and he warned me. Let's say he was living near here, and I was staying like over here. It was like 6 blocks, and he warned me, man, be careful, even just walking. Like you could get, taken advantage of just walking that far. Your things taken it from you against your will. And I'm like, oh man, it's 6 blocks. Like, I've lived in some terrible places, some awful neighborhoods before, and never heard you can't walk 6 blocks. But I didn't have issues. But now if I was living there, I'd probably be more interested in following his advice. Christopher says, actually, yes, I'm considering a trip to Manila next month for a week. Very cool. Yeah, Manila, is a huge city. Really, I think it's the most densely populated city in the world. So if you're a city person, I need to turn my aircon down a bit, guys. Sorry about this. If you're a big city person, like, I don't think you can go wrong with checking out Manila and seeing if it's right for you. I watched a channel called Frugal Travelers, and they released their videos like 6 months after the fact, but they're releasing videos from Manila, or that they recorded in Manila right now. And I like their perspective. They're just easygoing, and they talk about the economics of visiting wherever they go. And I'm interested in Manila. I didn't have the best experience in Manila Airport. I will warn you, Manila Airport is super crowded. When I was there, I just got this kind of a stressed out vibe due to passenger volume. It's just so packed and crowded. But it's, obviously English is super prevalent there. You're not going to have any challenges communicating in English. It's a mega city. Like I said, I've only transited through there, but a lot of people really seem to like it, especially the touristic areas like Bonifacio, Global City, Makati. I was at a company where I could have potentially transferred to Manila, but I ended up going to a different job for more money. But sometimes I wonder if I'd taken that job. This was with a tech company that had teams in Manila. So a friend of a friend actually manages some tech sales teams in Manila. And she enjoys it. Like, she went over with a plan to go for like a year. She sublet her place, and she's still there 5 years later. So there's a lot of opportunity in Manila, I think, for some tech related opportunity. I get a bit bored here, so my wife and I take trips around Southeast Asia every 3 or 4 months. Yeah, I mean, I think Southeast Asia is fantastic for that. Where we can pull up Manila. I don't know if I'll be flying into Manila after Vietnam, because there's a few things. Like, one, more of the people that I plan to do interviews with are based in Dumaguete, and then two, where I plan to stay longer term is in Mindanao. But I'm also considering doing like a test for graduate school applications, either the GMAT or the LSAT. And Manila is the only place in the country where you can take the American versions of those tests. So I may end up being in Manila for like a month or so. And if I get a job back in the States, like let's just assume Vietnam goes well, I go to the Philippines, I stay in the Philippines for 6 months, I end up needing to go back to the States, then I'm thinking about spending my last month in Manila. So this is super helpful as far as knowing about what you guys like and what you're interested in, what you guys are going to be doing. But yeah, the airport is just, I don't know. It's tough too. I've heard if you need to transfer to a domestic flight, then the terminals are really like spread apart where they encourage you to take a cab. And like, that just seems convoluted to me for a domestic flight, why you need to transfer from an international to a domestic flight. I can't imagine what that would be like coming from the States where you're jet lagged and you've sat on a plane for 12 hours. It's not so bad coming from Southeast Asia, but that is something I love about Southeast Asia is you have so much variety in the region that if you want to do something different, if you want a different vibe, you're a few hour flight away from, 8 different countries, maybe 10 different countries, and you can get a totally different experience than what you're used to. And it's strange to me too, because like I love the Philippines and the Philippines is an awesome country. So it is kind of strange to me that Manila airport is the way it is. And when I was flying out, I looked out, I got on one of the last flights out of the city. So last time I flew through Manila airport, I think it was the Tall volcano erupted, and you could already, I don't know if you could see smoke, but like when I landed, I can't remember where I was going. It might have been, I think I was going to Japan. When I landed in Japan, like I saw over the news that the Tall had erupted, and a few hours after, or within like an hour maybe of my flight leaving, they shut down the airport. They interrupted all the flights. They're like, no, we got to wait until this thing stops to let air traffic resume. So I imagine that was a huge headache for all the people working there. And I had an American buddy, a guy I went to college with, who was living in Manila at the time with his wife. And I think that they were somewhat impacted by it, not extreme, but, traffic and the stress and all that can be a headache. Let's see if it's still. Yeah, so I can show you. I think this is the this is the company, and I enjoyed working there. But I think this is one of their offices. Let's see if it's still. Yeah, okay, no, this was. So they didn't change the name in the Philippines. So this company was acquired by an American company, but this is actually their office in BGC. And I didn't know they had a view of a helicopter pad. Anyway. Very, very modern, very cool. Like I've thought about reaching out to my old manager at this company to see if there's opportunities there, because if I could go back to the States, work for a couple of years and transfer to BGC, that would be awesome, because I'd be earning a Western income, living in the Philippines, in like a great part of the Philippines, right? BGC, very convenient. It's like 1 foot in the West. I often say this: 1 foot in the West, 1 foot in the Philippines. And I'd be moving forward in my career. I'd be making career advancements, learning a lot, and a great city too. If you want to be a content creator, there's a number of really big bloggers that are based there. It's also super orderly from what I've heard. I haven't been to BGC, but that's something I've thought about. So, might be something I do. Like, might reach out to him. He and I are still on great terms. Like, he vouched for me when I was in an interview process back in February. I was interviewing at a company. I didn't get the offer. Got to the last round, but didn't get the offer, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it would be really cool to be working for, like, that's the dream, right? To be doing this kind of work, but in a country that I prefer to living back in the States. At least Manila has some places like Denny's and Texas Roadhouse. Yeah, that would be a huge appeal of being in Manila, is that you get these American businesses that you're familiar with where you can go and have what you're used to, and you can enjoy, like, you can just enjoy. There's less friction there. That's the best way I can put it, is there's less friction when you have these businesses. Like, I love Texas Roadhouse back in the States. I ate there for my birthday a couple of years ago. I also like Denny's. I've eaten at Denny's quite a few times in the middle of the night. And when I lived in Denver, I used to live down the street from a Denny's. So if I was hungry in the middle of the night and didn't feel like cooking, didn't have anything else going on, I'd go down to Denny's. BGC is pretty nice. Reminds me of nicer parts of Manhattan or Chicago. Very clean and walkable. Yeah, and there's security everywhere, so I've heard it's very safe. Like, it's a place you can walk around in the middle of the night and not feel unsafe. It's well lit, so you can see where you're going. I think they have some really nice parks here too. Like, I'm seeing some really nice parks here. It's also got the golf club, polo club, and then you've got this. And so the Manila American Cemetery. Cemeteries can be kind of a sad place, but if they have it in set up like a beautiful park, then it can be a pleasant open air kind of a green space in such a densely populated city. I think you need to have those parks to up a bit. And this is something I want to see really bad, this Venice Grand Canal Mall. I haven't actually been to the real Venice in Italy, but I've heard about this, that they have these canals, and it looks stunning. I mean, the art here. It just looks super cool. Very, very modern. Here we go. Okay, you can get a sense of the canals. I guess they have these paddle boats, and here you can see they've got, I guess it's kind of mirroring what the experience would be somewhat like in Italy, but very, very cool looking. It reminds me too of the this hotel I've been to in Las Vegas. I was there for a work conference about a year and a half ago, and I really like the design of that spot. Yes, and McKinley nearby is nice. I stayed at a condo at Venice. So you've actually stayed here. That's awesome, Christopher. I'm so glad that you could confirm it's as nice as it looks, because I've been wanting to check it out for a while. And yeah, I like it a lot. I like the vibe. Like, from what I can tell, it looks beautiful. Very clean, very well maintained. And I love the open air vibe too. Like, that's something I liked a lot about the Philippines, is there, I'll be honest, I didn't like it at first until I spent more time traveling and realized there's elements of this that remind me of where I'm from in a physical way. And culturally, it's Filipino, right? Like, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's Western, but it's also, there's of course, many Filipinos there. So you get the friendliness of the Philippines, but you get the layout that you're used to coming from the United States. I went to a number of outlet malls in the Philippines. I'm like, this feels just like America. And so this is something that would remind me of some of the outlet or outdoor malls I've been to in, like, Los Angeles, for example. And I love the fresh air. I love going from inside the air-conditioned store to being out and seeing the beautiful sunset. And you get a better sense of time, like the transition of time in an outdoor mall, where sometimes when you're in an indoor mall, you feel like you could be there for hours and hours, and like you're in a casino or something, and you lose a sense of what time it is. Okay, so this is where Texas Roadhouse is. Rented a place on Agoda Homes connected to that mall. Yeah, I'll be sure to check out Agoda Homes. I've only ever, well, no, I booked accommodation quite a few times through Agoda, but I'll have to look it up. And I'm glad to hear Texas Roadhouse is in there. I'll definitely be considering it because I miss eating at Texas Roadhouse back home. I mean, it's just such a good steak restaurant. The quality control is mind blowing. The fact that they're able to do the volume of business that they do while still putting out a great product. I like Texas Roadhouse a lot. Christopher says it's a great mall. We went there every day. Yeah, it's awesome to be able to walk around there too, because in some parts of the Philippines, you you may not feel like you can just go out walking. I never felt unsafe in the Philippines, but the infrastructure doesn't necessarily lend itself like to you walking from point A to point B. So I think that's an appeal of being in a BGC, right? Is that you got wide sidewalks and you've got large storefronts and things are more catered to like a Western audience. But yeah, I'll be right back, guys. I'm gonna hit the restroom. But yeah, it looks really, really cool. And so there is that level of comfort, right? So after a while of traveling in Asia, um, part of me does miss some aspects of living in the States. I mean, I mentioned in a video before, I miss my friends back home. But the other thing that I miss is just the general layout. And one of my buddies who's Malaysian, he told me, he's like, when I went to the Philippines, I was like I was back in America. He went to college in America, and it's just kind of a humorous thing to hear from somebody that's, they lived in America, they're not American, but that being here reminded them a lot of America. And yeah, the English is something I'm really looking forward to, because if I had to say there's one sort of downer or challenge in Thailand, is that the lack of English can be a bit of a barrier at times to connecting. Love the Thai people, but when you can't communicate as effectively as you'd like, then there's just that piece missing, and you don't have that in the Philippines, right? You can communicate with everybody really effectively. You can get to know people. You can talk about things like basketball or American food or culture, and yeah, there's a really great place to connect with the locals. I love the Christmas too. The Christmas starts early in the Philippines, and so you really yeah, you can really enjoy it there. But yeah, we got a few folks on here. Feel free to chime in or throw any questions. I greatly appreciate Christopher for sharing a lot about his experience in Manila with me. But curious if anybody else has been to the Philippines, what their thoughts are. I know I'm going to Vietnam next, but the Philippines stole a piece of my heart the last time I went. And it's a country that I've looked forward to going back to potentially more than any other country. It's, yeah, there's just so much to love about it. And it's this place that for me perfectly straddles the line between mystery and familiar. It's not too mysterious that I feel out of my element, like I have in some countries, but it's familiar enough. Like it's mysterious enough to be interesting. It's familiar enough to be comfortable. And here you guys can get a sense like super developed. I mean, this looks like it could be any city in the Western democracies with the skyscrapers and the development, W Hotel. It's like a much bigger version of Cebu IT Park. Yes, I can see how the Philippines is an easy transition for Western expats. We were there in early December, and Filipinos love Christmas for sure. Yeah, I think they start celebrating in like October, and um, it's really cool to see them have that Christmas spirit. Sometimes, like back in the States, you feel like people don't have as much Christmas spirit. Maybe more so in California. Like it's still popular back in my hometown, but a little bit less so in urban California. I think because you have more people that are secular or they're Jewish or they're Muslim or they may not observe the holiday. Like the manager of my building in Berkeley, she didn't observe the Christmas holiday. So that's something that's just like refreshing. It takes me back to my childhood when it seemed like everybody celebrated where I grew up, and it was very popular, like a very important holiday for a lot of people. And it's yeah, I think for somebody that likes walking, like I like walking a lot. I mean, this looks really nice. Like I love to go walk around this park and enjoy it. I think you also could be a runner here. It doesn't have cemetery vibes. Like I understand it's a cemetery and we got to pay our show our respects, but the greenery is beautiful, and yeah, it's really a beautiful country. I love the kind of the wave design that they've got there. Oh, okay. So you're from Indiana, Christopher. Yeah, so I can relate, being from Tennessee, very similar to Indiana in a lot of ways. And it's definitely comforting, right? To have that experience, something that you're very familiar with, that you feel like, wow, like even though I'm from halfway around the world, we have this really important holiday in common. And yeah, they love it. I love it. My probably the best Christmas I've ever had was in the Philippines. When I was in the Philippines, Christmas 2019, my buddy picked me up from my hotel in this truck he'd borrowed from his cousin, and we went with his wife and a son to his mother-in-law's place in Cagayan de Oro and had Christmas there. I got to meet all of his extended family, and we had some cakes and stuff like that. It was really, really nice. I think over like 30 or 40 people came. So many people came, we couldn't fit in the house. So some folks were hanging out outside, and we kind of cycle and shuffle in. Christmas is really special in the Philippines, and I'm hoping I can spend this upcoming Christmas in the Philippines because it's just such a special holiday. But yeah, it has the Central Park vibe, I know you, Christopher, you've been to New York City, but you see the skyscrapers and you see the urban landscape, but then you have this green space where you get fresh air and you can decompress. You feel like you're in a forest. I think that's so important for our mental health to spend time in parks, even if we're in a concrete jungle. Two of my favorite places in Bangkok are Benchikiti Park and also Lumpini Park. Yeah, Filipinos are so sweet and family oriented. I very, very much agree with that. I'm shocked by the kindness of the Filipinos. Like whenever I talk to my Filipino friends, and it's like, even though I haven't been there in about 4.5 years, it's like I was there yesterday. And I felt this connection with my buddy from the Philippines that like we're going to be friends forever. And you don't often get that feeling, right? Like people come in and out of your lives, people move, people change, people, they develop different kinds of priorities. And yet, unless he's super busy with work, we've still been able to be in touch. And um, yeah, I feel a really great connection there. I think with the Philippines, it's the place I've had. the easiest time connecting with the local people. And it's something that, I keep going to new countries, but that's something that always stands out in my mind is how kind people were to me. And it was really surprising because you experience people that don't have a whole lot and you're not really sure what to make of things, but you feel very much welcomed there. And it's a feeling I'll never forget. Now, I mentioned in Manila, it may be a little bit more challenging because people are so busy. It's such a big city. It's such an important business hub, a tourism hub. But yeah, I really look forward to going back. So this is the high street. This must be like the most important shopping street. And I love these billboards. This immediately reminds me of Bangkok. Beautiful billboards and uh, Blade Runner vibes. Not as much as Bangkok though, because it seems maybe a little more subdued than Bangkok, where Bangkok ads are like over the top. I mean, it's they're very much in your face, which I like and is quirky and interesting. But this looks nice as well, and yeah, the deli looks great. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I know people pay a premium for it, but I think there's going to be more Western food in the Philippines compared to Thailand, which is something I miss from time to time. I do order pizza here in Bangkok a couple times a month, and being able to have that more readily available, just because Philippines, former American colony, a lot of service members, military bases. So I think that even though like it's arguably harder to produce some Western foods in the Philippines, there's going to be more interest to import a lot of those goods, the meats, the cheeses, um, and then of course local Filipino food. Like some of it reminds me a lot of the food from where I'm from, like dishes like chicken adobo. Um, Remind me a lot of where I'm from. What a sweet cat. And they've got a Randy's Donuts. I remember going to Randy's Donuts like the first time I went to LA was about 15 years ago. And we went to Randy's in Inglewood. You see a TGI Fridays. Yeah, it's just a beautiful city. Oh, Raging Bull. Okay, I'll have to make a note of that to check out the burger bar, Raging Bull Burger Bar. I had a great burger in Cebu. I was seriously impressed by it. I was like, this is like the best burger I've had in Southeast Asia. It was a spot that it's not open late night anymore, but it was open at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was hungry and maybe it was 10 p.m. Maybe it wasn't quite one, but it was late and it was like packed. Like it was like more of a almost a drive-in style, but you almost like a Sonic drive-in kind of. And you had all these people around it, super popular, super crowded with locals, amazing burger and fries that I got there. And it's lively, going to the Philippines, a country with a rapidly growing economy. It's just such a lively place. But I'll probably wind down shortly, Christopher, just because yeah, been rolling for about an hour and 15 now, and uh, have some stuff to do to prepare for my next trip. But I really appreciate you chiming in and talking about your experiences in the Philippines and confirming a lot of what I'm excited about, and sharing your experiences that are so interesting to hear about. And like, I think shared experiences are just one of the most fun parts of traveling. It'll be fun to walk around the malls and look at the interesting stuff they have. I want to check out. I want to check out the SM for sure. SMs are always really, really nice and beautiful. It's in a different part of town. It looks like they position them. I'll probably stay on a bit longer for Tony. Hey, Tony, how are you doing? No worries. I think I'm going to keep rolling. I thought maybe folks might be getting tired of dropping off, but I'm going to keep rolling on the stream. Tony, we're talking a bit about Christopher's experience in Manila and talking about the Philippines. I know this stream is supposed to be about Vietnam, but my plan is to go to the Philippines after Vietnam. And a lot of folks just love the Philippines. I love the Philippines. And I think for English speakers like us, the Philippines has so much to offer in terms of connecting with local people and having I use this phrase way too much, but one foot in the West and then one foot in another country. And I think you have that feeling at times in the Philippines because the language barrier is not there, right? You can communicate effectively with people. I recently hopped on Mike's Philippine retirement, did a stream, and I jumped on because he was just testing his equipment out. And I was able to immediately have a conversation with Janet, his wife, and that was just surprising because I'm used to just not being able to connect with the significant others of expats, right? Because they may not have, tons of English, but Janet, of course, she has great English as a Filipino. So SM Mall, super modern. So it looks like SM does this because it's similar in Cebu, where they built the mall in the reclamation area. So I don't know if this looks like it may be reclamation area as well, but in Manila instead of Cebu. So that may be where they position them just because, I don't know, that may be where the development and the growth, some of the development growth is happening in the city, but it's nice to spread them out. It's nice to have, if you're staying in a different part of the city, like maybe you're in more of the downtown area, you don't quite want to go across the city to BGC, then you're able to just, come down here to the reclamation area and hit up a super nice modern mall. See you later, Chris. Have a good one. It was nice to chat. But how are you doing, Tony? The 1 foot in 2 worlds principle of living abroad appeals to me as well. I'm leaning toward finding a place that's culturally, economically 30% Western, 70% non-Western. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, Tony. I think that you have more comfort in that way, right? You have some of the things that you like from back home, but you are in a little bit slower pace, right? Like that's one of the things I love about being abroad is that the pace is just a little bit more moderate and you feel like you can think through things, not be so reactive. At least I feel that way. Of course, you won't have the pressure of your career when you're living outside of Canada. So yeah, I think that's you're going to enjoy it a lot. And I think I wish you the best in your search for the right place for you, the right place that you want to enjoy. And yeah, there's so many wonderful places out there that you can discover and check out. And the Philippines is definitely up there for me, but there's just tons of great choices. And yeah, I agree. That's why I like the Andean countries. You can feel like you're outside the West. Totally agree. I wasn't sure about that because I wasn't sure if I should refer to Latin America as the West or not. And I was doing some digging online and people were saying, no, Andean countries in Latin America, we shouldn't consider them Western countries. And yeah, it just, the pace is so much more relaxed and people have different priorities. They're not stressing out as much, like to the same extreme to pay bills. People still worry about paying bills, but it didn't seem so like hyper focused on that, right? I mean, it seems like when we meet folks in the West, one of the first questions we ask each other is, what do you do for work? And I never got those questions much in Latin America or here in Southeast Asia. Eventually it comes up, but it's not really the priority like it is in the West, where people are trying to like figure out, where you are in the hierarchy. but yeah, I liked that a lot. I love the colors too. Like in the Andean countries, the colors are just so different. The pastels, the sunsets, but also the buildings are very colorful. San Francisco is a colorful town for what it's worth, but certainly San Francisco is an exception in the United States. We're talking about Manila, but I don't know. Like I've looked at some Airbnbs in Manila. It may be something where I go for a month. I've got to renew my passport. Something I didn't bring up earlier, but my passport expires next summer, and I want to renew it this fall. And I may do it in Vietnam, but if I don't get around to it in Vietnam, I'll definitely need to do it in the Philippines. And you can only do that in Manila or in Cebu. Now, I have heard you can mail it into the embassy and you can pay the fee online, and they'll mail it back to you. But, getting it done in person would make me feel a bit more secure, at least doing some of the process in person, because a passport is like your lifeline, right? It's one of your lifelines aside from just money. And when you're traveling abroad, is having that exit pass. But yeah, Tony says the strong indigenous culture of parts of Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador really makes you feel like you are outside the West, which appeals to me. It does, right? Like I was surprised when I met up with this Peruvian girl in Cusco. She opened a pop-up restaurant in her mom's restaurant. So her mom owned a restaurant, and then she would do her, like, on the days her mom's restaurant was closed, she would pop up in there and she'd serve sushi and local drinks. And she had a couple of younger sisters. I think she maybe had one younger sister, but really a family kind of warm environment and a community feeling. I met her friends, and I met this local band. She had a band come and play for everybody. And yeah, really, really, really warm vibe. Mexico City feels very US, Western. Yeah, you know what, Tony? That makes a lot of sense. I've heard it's become super popular with digital nomads and Western tourists, and a lot of people looking to go somewhere close to home, but somewhat different. And unfortunately, I think that can influence the vibe to such an extent where you're like, I still feel like I'm in the US. I felt like that to some extent in Cancun, because there's so many Western tourists in Cancun, like so many. And my friend that lives down there, he and his significant other, they work in the tourism industry. He's lived there for he's from the west coast of Mexico, south of Tijuana, but he moved to Cancun maybe 30, 40 years ago. And he has a t-shirt business. He also owns some restaurants. And you definitely feel like you get the sense in parts of Mexico that the economy does cater a lot to Western tourists. I felt like that in Tijuana when I went to get a wisdom tooth out. The dentist spoke great English, and the facility was super modern, very clean, very, very nice. But there was an element, and there was a Walmart. Like his dental office was like a block or two away from like a Walmart. So you do feel a little bit like you're back in the West, and that can be nice for short periods of time. But for longer periods of time, it's like, I'd rather just be back in my home country where I know everybody, I know plenty of people, and I speak the language, and I'm able to connect with people that I'm already familiar with. Where when I go abroad, I want something different, right? I want something that's taking me out of my element to some degree and giving me a variety of experiences that I couldn't have back home. Laos looks interesting. Yeah, Laos is, we can pull out, why don't we pull up Laos? If I had gotten a multiple entry visa, which I didn't, I applied for the single entry visa, I would do a run to Laos. It's interesting to me. There's a sizable Laotian population in my hometown of Nashville. And it's got a more of a country vibe. Like, you notice it doesn't have a coastline like its neighbors, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia. I've heard it's more country, like uh, it's got more of a, how do I explain it? Like it's just laid back and slow paced. I did hear from one guy that when I first went to Chiang Mai about 6 years ago, I, a mutual friend went up there for about a week, and he said it's the people are super super nice, but that there's not much to spend money on. So if you're a person that you want to like have some mod cons, modern conveniences, then you may have a bit less of those in Laos, but still a nice place nonetheless. And for a break or to kind of do something different, like definitely appealing. I'd like to get to Laos. I don't think I'll make it on this trip. I hope to make it next time. Um, I'd like to see Luang Prabang. I learned about Luang Prabang in one of my courses in college, and I'm interested in that. There's another town. I don't know if it's Lac Sao, but this is where people do their visa runs. So if they're in Vietnam and they need to do a visa run, I've heard it's popular for people to take a bus to here and then turn around and then go back, after a few days or something like that. But yeah, Laos is definitely interesting, like different, right? Different from these other countries in Southeast Asia that I don't know. I just feel like Laos probably doesn't have quite the same level of international influence as some of the places that have the coasts and places with like Vietnam has unfortunate history. Thailand, of course, international hub destination. Um, but yeah, Laos is certainly interesting there. I'll be landing in Da Nang. So I haven't booked my flight yet. I plan to do that after this stream, but I'll be landing. Where's the airport? Here. Yeah, this is the airport. I'll be landing here, and then I'll take a cab, and I'll probably stay somewhere on this peninsula here, probably more the northern part. That's where the Airbnbs I've been looking at are located, and yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. It'll be a new country for me. It'll be the first new country of this year, and really looking forward to it. I have been eating Vietnamese food for like over 10 years and never been to Vietnam. So I'm really looking forward to the banh mi and um, the pho and trying some other stuff, right? There's a lot of, most of the Vietnamese cuisine we have in the West is Southern Vietnamese food, right? And so trying some of the stuff that's more influenced by the North, like in Hanoi, will be really interesting. I don't have plans to go to Hanoi. I plan to focus on Da Nang because I'm more of a mid-sized city kind of guy. Just kind of what I've discovered over the last year. I like Bangkok, but it can be a bit overwhelming at times. But I do plan, if I do end up doing my passport renewal, I do plan to go down to Ho Chi Minh City. So Hanoi, it may be a thing where on the next trip to Southeast Asia, I visit Hanoi and Luang Prabang, just to kind of check out the north, more of the north in one trip, and have that experience. Great question, Tony. I'm gonna drink some more water here. So I plan to go to Vietnam in 1 month. So it's almost midnight. So a month from tomorrow, I'll be flying to Da Nang from Bangkok, and I'll be going there. It's like an hour and a half flight. Yeah, it's about an hour and a half flight, maybe hour and 45 minutes. Not a long flight at all. I'm really looking forward to something a little bit different. I'm very, very comfortable here in Thailand, but I want to do something to kind of mix it up and change things up. I could extend my time here in Thailand, but I'm ready to do something different. I'm really ready to do something a little bit different, and I think Vietnam is going to be the perfect fit for that. And so I'll land in Da Nang on July 8th, and then Yeah, I'll be there for probably about 2 months. My thought process right now is stay in Da Nang for about 2 months and then go down to Ho Chi Minh City for about a month. And then I'll fly from Ho Chi Minh City to the Philippines. But I don't know, I don't know how much I'm gonna love Vietnam. Like I've heard mixed stuff about it, and yeah, that's what I've heard, Tony. So I have mixed feelings about Vietnam. It's been high on my list for a lot of reasons. I have a Vietnamese American friend that I've connected well with back in the States, but it's it's chaotic. You also have only 5% of visitors to Vietnam return. So you have this ratio where 19 out of every 20 people that go don't come back. And that's a little bit, I don't know. It's a little bit worrisome, right? Or worrying, right? Like you wonder, what were their experiences? And so I've done some research. Uh, there's some petty theft issues in Vietnam. There's also some scams. I don't know how much I'm going to run into that. I've heard that overcharging is common. Like the, sometimes people won't give you your change back. You have to really kind of push to get your change back. I've heard too, like just trying to take, like at the airport, you try to call a Grab and people will come up trying to cancel your ride, or people will try to input a really big tip. And that kind of behavior is not the most welcoming, right? Like as a tourist, I don't like getting scammed based on principle. Like I worked hard for my money and I don't want to part ways with it for no reason. And so that's something that it's part of why I put off Vietnam for a while. I could have gone to Vietnam a while ago, but I'm running out of new countries in Southeast Asia. And I thought, well, I'm pretty experienced now in Southeast Asia. I've lived in Thailand now for a year. Why don't I give it a shot? If I don't like it, my plan is to leave early and go to the Philippines. So that's kind of the plan, is like I could stay for up to 3 months based on the visa I have for Vietnam. But if for some reason I don't like it, I feel like the touts or the scams or the petty theft is just too much for me to tolerate, then I'll just hop on a flight and head over to the Philippines. And I'm not assuming any of these things will happen. I've heard of plenty of people say that they love Vietnam, they had no issues, they weren't dealing with any challenges, that it's their favorite country, they'd love to go back, they plan to go back. So I go in with low expectations and a cautious mindset, but also a lot of intrigue. Ho Chi Minh City seems very loud, chaotic, fast, not great for us introverts, while Da Nang is quieter, still seems on the extrovert side. No? Yeah, I've heard that about Ho Chi Minh City as well. Like it's a grinder of a city that I've heard it described as more chaotic than Bangkok, which is impressive to me because Bangkok is a wild city. It's like Miami. Yeah, but yeah, I've heard that about Ho Chi Minh City. It's rapidly developing. There's construction everywhere. The economy is slowed down a little bit recently, but it's still a rapidly developing place with a wild nightlife scene. I've heard some people say like it's what Thailand was 10, 20 years ago. A month is pushing it, but if I do my passport renewal, I I worry a little bit about being far away in Da Nang when I do that. And the Airbnbs I looked at are like 5 minute, 10 minute walk away from the U.S. embassy or consulate, actually in Ho Chi Minh City. So if when I need to go drop it off, I could just walk down there, drop it off, and if anything comes up, I can just head back down there and sort out any issues that may arise. Um, I also, have some concerns that if I'm flying out to Manila, I want to make sure I'm close by to pick that back up, because what I've heard, the challenge that I've heard when it comes to getting it done in the Philippines is that when you need to transfer your visa from your old passport to your new passport, you actually have to make a trip to Manila. So if I'm in Mindanao or in Dumaguete, I'd have to actually fly to Manila and hang out up there for a while to get the visa, oh, like even a day or two to get the visa transferred from my old passport to my new passport. And so going in to Vietnam with a fresh passport, or into the Philippines with a fresh passport, that will save me that trip to Manila, which, yeah, Manila can definitely be pricey, and it's not out of budget, but it does seem like an unnecessary expense if it's something I could tackle in Vietnam. Anthony Bourdain sure liked Vietnam. It was his favorite place. I'm gonna have to go. You know what, Tony? Thank you so much for mentioning that. It's funny, your name is Tony, and then also Anthony Bourdain. Bourdain's short for, well, Anthony Bourdain's name is short, or the longer version of Tony. But I'll go back and watch his content on Vietnam. That's, I'm a fan of all of his series. A Cook's Tour was I think the original, and then Parts Unknown is the more famous one. But I'll go back and watch his Vietnam content because he really inspired a lot of people to travel, including myself. And I think he's just definitely sorely missed by a lot of folks. I wish he was still around making content about travel because he has such a unique perspective and down to earth and open-minded and what's the word, like relatable in some ways. And like he really respected the people because of his experience in the restaurant industry. He could really relate to the people that were making the food. And sometimes on travel shows, you get the impression people are maybe a little bit out of touch. But I never got that impression from Anthony Bourdain. He talked about how much Vietnam touched his soul and really felt connected to the people. Very interesting. That's something I'm going to load up for after our stream. Okay, yeah. So all of his stuff is up on YouTube. I'm gonna have to watch that. And there's a famous pho shop in Ho Chi Minh City where he and Barack Obama, former President Obama, ate at. And so I'd like to go check it out. I actually looked up the reviews for it a while ago just to see, and I don't know if they let people sit at that table anymore, but it would be cool to see, right? Like a piece of history and a connection between two really people that really impacted the world, two people that had a massive outsized impact on the world. Thank you for reminding me, Tony, because I'm getting excited about this, about doing something new. I love Thailand, but I've seen so much and experienced so much in Thailand that I'm adjusting to it in some ways, and it's becoming the norm or something that I don't know. Like I'm looking forward to Vietnam a lot. It's going to be very different from here in Thailand. Vietnam is much more influenced by China. So Vietnam is part of what a lot of people call the Sinosphere. And so it's going to be very different culturally from here in Thailand. And it's, I think it's going to be really cool. Like I said, a lot of people have said it's like Thailand was before the tourism boom, or when tourism wasn't to the extent that it is now. And so I think that will really add a lot to the experience of being in a country that's, Thailand to me feels more middle of the road. I don't call Thailand developing or developed. It's, if you could call it second world. I don't really like the first or third world distinction. I think it's not always super helpful. But I've heard Vietnam being compared more to Cambodia. And I loved Cambodia. I felt like Cambodia had such nice people. I connected really well with them, had a lot of life-affirming experiences in Cambodia. Best partying I've ever had done in Southeast Asia was in Phnom Penh. And I think Vietnam is going to have more of that vibe. I don't have any local connections in Vietnam. So one of my subscribers, Jake, he is there right now. He's living in Da Nang right now. But aside from him, well, and one other person earlier in the stream, Solo Transient, he's planning on going to Vietnam in about a month. So I'll have a couple of subscribers that are actually going to be there when I'm there. And so that'll be really nice. But aside from them, I don't know anybody else. So that'll be, a little bit different. Not having a long-term resident of Vietnam there, but I can meet people, right? I can put myself out there and meet different people and connect with different people. Um, that was something that helped me a lot in Cambodia. Is a friend convinced me to go there and took me out and showed me around town, and we had a lot of fun. And so that's something that will take a little bit more legwork on my part, I think. But obviously, I'm going to try to meet up with Jake and also solo transient, and that should help as far as having a better sense of the lay of the land. I think Chris also loves Vietnam, the redheaded vlogger. Yeah, I've watched some of his stuff. I like his stuff. I'm gonna watch some more of that to prepare. I like his vlogs. I like the way he like connects with people and talks to people, and he seems very respectful and considerate. And like he's able to break down the language barrier to some extent with the locals. I think that's super valuable, and definitely deserves respect for that, right? Like conscious traveler trying to honor the people. But yeah, that's funny. We watch, I have a feeling we watch a lot of the same vloggers, Tony. Some say don't watch too many vloggers. If you're making content, it might influence it, but no, like a lot of these people are so good at what they do. Like it's mind blowing, and they're inspiring, and they're doing one of a kind stuff that nobody could replicate. And that's why they build such a large following, and they're able to show people a different side of the country. Because sometimes, something I like about Chris is he shows a lot of boots on the ground experiences. And I feel like sometimes travel vloggers, they show you vacation mode, and there's a lot of value in that, right? Like if you're doing just a discovery trip, you're just exploring a little bit, you just want to get a little taste of it and see what it's about, then it's super helpful to see those vacation videos. But if you're thinking, hey, I might want to live here for a while or even just a few months, then seeing those vloggers that are there for more long-term, that invest the time into learning some basics of the language, that try to connect with local people, I think that's incredible, and it's super helpful for people that they want that deeper experience, and they want to get a sense of like what's it like to actually live here, right? Yes, Chris's friend Max spends a lot of time in Vietnam. Okay, I'll be sure to check out Max as well. Like, this is super helpful. Thank you for letting me know about these guys, Tony. Or reminding me about Chris, and then letting me know about Max, because it's kind of funny too. Like, who knows? I might run into some of these guys. Like, I ran into Sly when I was in Peru. I'll drop the name of his channel. He's an American vlogger from Seattle, and he's been everywhere. I mean, he retired from the military, and so he's got this military pension, and he's gone all over Africa, all over South America, Europe, and Asia. And it's just it's incredible what these people do, and like the courage they have to go up and approach people and talk to people and put themselves out there and then share the stories. And let's see, Da Nang. In a previous live stream, I did cover a lot of what I want to see in Da Nang. I may, I'll pull us down to Ho Chi Minh City. I covered it somewhat, but I know a lot more about Da Nang. Okay, very cool. Aeon Mall. I didn't know they had an Aeon. Aeon is the nicest. Well, it was 5 years ago the nicest mall in Phnom Penh. They have built a newer mall since then, but Aeon is this Japanese chain, and they do really, really nice malls. Really like the layout and the modern construction, the really high ceilings. They probably have, this looks like a similar store in the Aeon Mall in Phnom Penh, where they've got a lot of imported goods. So if you're like, I remember they had sushi, like they had this whole like sushi section at Aeon in Phnom Penh. So they may have that here as well at Tan Phu Celadon. What else? What else in Saigon? I do want to see Landmark 81. This is the tallest building in the city, and it looks so epic. I'm a huge fan of architecture, and it reminds me a bit of the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur. Now, I'm wondering if they have like shopping or anything like that in the base. In Kuala Lumpur, they do have a really nice shopping mall in the base, and there's a lot of conveniences to be had there. There's a Western style grocer there. Um, very, very cool place. You may not like him as he's controversial, but there's a really famous vlogger from Nordic country whose Vietnam videos goes really small communities, non-touristic areas. Bald and Bankrupt, probably. I am familiar with Bald and Bankrupt, and I've heard a lot about his controversy. I have mixed feelings about him. I know he can get pretty controversial. You know, I think he's good at what he does as far as making engaging content. Sometimes I don't like when some of these guys underplay the risks that they take on. Um, I have some level of concern that they might inspire some people to try to follow in their footsteps, people that are not so prepared or cavalier as them. But, I've also heard from a buddy of mine back in my hometown, he was telling me that he watches this channel, Small Brained American. And Small Brained American can sometimes be a bit abrasive as well. And if it pops up, Tony, I'll be sure to let you know who it is and just like what I think about it. How's it going, Chris? How are you doing tonight or today? I'm not sure if where you're located. I see, in Colorado. I lived in Colorado for several years, Chris. What a small world. Welcome to the channel. It's interesting to find out. Okay, you were in Cusco. Very, very cool. Cusco is a town or a city that Tony, who's joining us tonight, and myself as well, both love a lot. Cusco is a really cool city. I love Cusco. I can't say enough positive things about that city. It's just really a charming town. And hi, Harold Balder. Yeah, I've watched Harold Balder off and on for a while. He was recently in the United States, and then I think he's most recently left. Let me look up really quick where he's at. Oh, he's in Vietnam. Yeah, okay. So he's actually in Vietnam right now. I'll watch more of his Vietnam content. That was really shocking to me. Of all the places for him to go, he's actually in Vietnam. Chris says, last time I tuned into your stream, I was in Cusco. Yeah, Cusco is a cool town. It reminded me a lot of Colorado, like with the mountains. Of course, it's not nearly as cold, but it's still got that mountain town vibe. Sala Urban Park, really cool. I think I did take a look at this earlier, but with the koi fish, or in a prior stream. What else? E-Mart. So this might be, it says supermarket, and I'm wondering, whenever I think of E-Mart, I think about like electronics malls, but it looks like it's more of a standard supermarket. But that's a really fun way to kind of learn about a different country is hitting up the local grocery stores. Any travel plans, Chris? I know you said you were in Cusco last time. you have any plans for the second half of this year? I know one of my buddies, Joey, like we met through the Sound Tribe Sector 9 community. So we used to follow the same band. And he's in Italy right now. And I've actually been talking to him about Thailand. He's wanting to come to Phuket, I think at the end of this year. So he works like 28 on, 28 off. He's in oil and gas. And I've been just telling him about Thailand, and like, I'm happy for him, but I'm also a little bit jealous that he's in Italy because I've never been to Italy, and Italy just seems like really, really a beautiful country with amazing food, friendly people. Of course, not closer to home as far as like level of development, but an interesting place nonetheless. Whatever you may think of, I think he spells it Harold Balder, but his Vietnam and Cusco vids go way out in the country, goes to the homes of poor farmers, doesn't speak a lick of Vietnamese, but gets by. Yeah, he's cavalier. And, I try not to judge these guys either. People love to tear apart anybody that gets notoriety or fame online. And, oh, look what this person did and look what that person did. And it's like, yeah, well, like, you have to have, I think it's important to have an open mind. And we have to understand that these vloggers are there for our entertainment and for our enjoyment. And it's not much different than, like, I don't know, looking at a Hollywood actor and being like, oh, can you believe they did this or that? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards, but it almost takes away from the value of their content and the risks that they're taking by going to these places. It can be dangerous to travel, and like even in ways you wouldn't expect. I mean, going up to the mountains in rural Vietnam where you don't know anybody and you don't speak the language. What if you forget water? What if you get lost? Like, innocuous stuff can be dangerous. So they deserve some level of credit. I know they're getting paid well for the risk that they take on and the challenges that they overcome. I'm sure there's a lot of different things that happen off camera that are difficult in terms of logistics and visas and all of that. So, I try to avoid getting too much into controversy because I don't like to start conflict with other bloggers, but I lean toward not being judgmental because to me, like, I'm not, in the legal system. I don't make the judgment on visa issuance. If the country allows this individual to come in, then that's on them, right? Like, they've, clearly they can do some background on these popular vloggers and make a determination. Is this somebody that, we want to come here and spend money and enjoy themselves or not? Like, I'm not in a position to make that determination. So I don't like the mob, when it comes to going after big vloggers. I don't know that my channel will ever be that, successful. But if I get there, I hope that people have some level of mercy and grace, because I don't have a perfect past. I don't think any of us do. I think we all have some things in our background that we're not proud of. I don't have anything extreme in my background, but people are also very good at making small things into large things. And people figure out, troll types figure out a way to present things in a way that makes things worse than what they are. Like, you could jaywalk and people would make that out to be, oh, you're causing traffic disturbances, right? So yeah, I don't like that. And it seems to only amplify these vloggers, right? When people go after them, it only seems to give more attention and build up their subscriber base more, unless it's an extreme example like World Zoom. That's the only vlogger I could think of where people really turned on him, but his background was extreme, right? I mean, he really did some really bad stuff that universally people don't agree with, or people agree that it was really bad. And so the more gray area stuff, like, I overlook it because I try to overlook it because it's important also to give people a second chance. I mean, people do dumb stuff when they're young. It's part of being young. It's part of how young people learn, is making mistakes and trying to move on from those. And yeah, we can't, I mean, it's one thing to expect like a judge or something to have like a spotless background, but an entertainer, like, I mean, what do you expect? Even Anthony Bourdain, right? Tony, like, has a bit of a checkered past, or had a bit of a checkered past, I'm a huge fan of his. But yeah, I mean, if you read his books or you listen to him talk about his younger days, I mean, he had some real issues. And, in spite of those issues, Anthony Bourdain opened up a lot of people's minds, right? Like, people are seeing this guy who came from New York City, one of the most developed cities in the world, if not the most developed city in the world, one of the most prosperous places in the world on the planet, a place that millions of people dream about living, and then goes to some like godforsaken places, right? Some terrible places, and humanizes the people that live there and gives a window into their lives in a way that's non-judgmental and in a way that it shows us the humanity in these people in these places, and it demystifies them, it destigmatizes them. And I think it's great if it encourages tourism. I think that that's one of the things that people can do that would benefit a lot of the developing world, is actually going there and visiting there, maybe even living there, depending on the circumstances. Putting money into the local economy, hiring locals for services, eating at local restaurants, staying with locals and accommodations. These are all positive. I know some people say, "Oh, over tourism is bad," and it's like, there's plenty of tourism in the Western world. Those people, like people in the Western world, make tons of money from hotels and fancy restaurants and airplanes and all that stuff. And spreading it around, not the worst thing in the world. That's what I'm saying. Whenever one may think of Balder, his vids give us a glimpse into the lives and homes of poor people outside of expat and tourist areas. And those are the people that need it the most, right? Like, it's easy to put money in the pocket of somebody that's got a fancy hotel in, Singapore or something like that. But it's arguably more impactful to go to places that are not as well known, because the places that are not as well known may be the tourist hotspots of tomorrow. I talked to my buddy down in Mexico about it. He's like, yeah, when I got to this island, he lives in Isla Mujeres. We can pull that up actually. Isla Mujeres. When he went to Isla Mujeres, he was like, yeah, it was, not that developed, not that many people here. And now it's grown a lot, and there's a lot of people that love to go there. It's busier and busier every time I go there, and the people benefit from that. And so these places that are not well known. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to get to that, by the way. I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing this point up, Tony. The places that are undiscovered today are potentially popular places of tomorrow. For me, I wanted to go to Cancun, but I stayed with my buddy that lives on this island, and it's not the same built up vibe that you have 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago when I went there for the first time. It was even much less developed. And so you could see the beauty of Cancun across the water, but you're not in the hotel zone, right? Where you're paying $500 a night to stay in an all-inclusive, and you're in Mexico, but you're not really in Mexico. You're in a very curated experience. You've got the all you can drink, the all you can eat, the luxury pools, and you don't really spend as much time with the local people. You're separate. Like in the hotel zone, you're quite literally separated from the local neighborhoods. And so you don't really get that full on experience that I think a lot of us more serious travelers are looking for. There's another Indo-New York guy, vlogger I just discovered, who goes to poor and isolated communities. Some don't like it, but you get to see what poor people in isolated Central America home lives look. Yeah, I think that's so important because, there's an immigration crisis in the United States. I've heard there's one in Canada as well. And there's this interest on the part of some people. They want to grift out. They want to grift up resentment and negative sentiment and anger and frustration. And a lot of people are totally detached from the way that other people live. Due to the extreme inequality in the United States, people are very detached from the harsh realities of the lives of much of the developing world. and more so than the developing world, the super frontier. So I think of, there's developing, and then frontier. And the frontier world is where the real challenges are, the places where they may not have safe, clean running water. They may not have, they might not have access to a lot of the modern amenities that we're familiar with. They might not have access to good jobs. They might not have access to good education. And understanding, like, no matter what your problems are in the developed world, you can't imagine what some other people are struggling with. And it's not to minimize problems we have in the developed world, as there are many. But it's important to try to put things in perspective. And I think it helps me, especially, to calm down and not overthink my problems when I see, wow, these people are surviving on like nothing, right? These people are surviving on nothing. So maybe I can sort out my problems. But yeah, for the record, I don't like mob attacks. Tony says, for the record, I don't like mob attacks on these guys for their personal lives. I don't care about that. These videos are educational and realistic. Yeah, and I feel the same way. It's like, if I go to watch a movie, I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, what did this guy like eat for breakfast? Oh, like, I don't like that. Like, oh, where does he live? Oh, I can't believe he's so rich. Like, who cares? Like, they're doing a lot of work. Like, I know that sometimes it may not be construed that way because we see such a nice end product with some of these vloggers. They have such a well edited, well planned out, thoughtful presentation. They're articulate on camera. But people don't know how difficult vlogging is. Like, some of my vlogs, I put a lot of work into, and they didn't get any views. And it takes a lot of effort to get to the point where you've got this big audience and people are willing to watch and engage on a consistent basis. And you're defying gravity to have a successful travel channel, because there's so many good travel channels out there in 2024. And the fact that they still stay relevant, that they're still able to put out compelling stuff in 2024 after all these years of them traveling and going to different places, speaks a lot to their work ethic and to just their ability to tell stories. And these stories will be around forever. Like, we'll go back and watch years and years of their travels and get a glimpse into another world. I think it's also super educational. Like, I've mentioned it before, but there's only so many vacation videos I'm going to get benefits from. Whereas with these guys, some of these guys, it's not vacation mode, right? If you're going into a remote part of Central America or Vietnam, it's much more educational than is just pure entertainment or pure like, oh, that looks like a cool resort, or oh, that looks like good food. Like, it feels almost more real in a way. But yeah, great point, Tony. I think the vloggers get way too much like critique and criticism. I think some of it's jealousy, right? I think some people, they're in their office job. I've been there. They're chained to a desk. They're frustrated. They don't get the respect they deserve. They're not paid as well as they should be. They've got some family issues. They may have some health issues. They may have some health issues, upstairs health issues. And they see these vlogs they see these vloggers in these beautiful, gorgeous countries that they see like and social media is somewhat to blame for this. They see the highlights. They don't see like the guy that gets locked out of his hotel, the vlogger that gets locked out of his hotel and he's trying to speak to somebody in another language. Hey, I'm locked out. Hey, so they only see the nice bits, and they can project or imagine the financial upside, but they don't realize these guys are not taking the safe route. You're an independent contractor on YouTube. I love YouTube, but they have to do a lot of work to make sure their videos pass muster, that they bleep out inappropriate language, that they edit out some negative experiences. They also don't want to show the country in such a light that they're not welcome back, right? Because some vloggers will just poo-poo on a certain country or people or culture, and you do that to a certain extent. You may not be able to go back, and so there's a lot of work that goes into these vloggers behind the scenes. Like my favorite is probably Best Ever Food Review Show, and I'm like, oh man, this guy has seen a lot. I mean, you just see it in his eyes. The amount of countries he's been to, the places he's been, the amount of work that he's done, coming from nothing in Minnesota to being the most popular vlogger ever, travel vlogger, food vlogger ever, being on Joe Rogan's podcast. Mind blowing. Paul Dilla is his name. I think he's born in New York, but he's from an Indian background. Okay, yeah, I'd have to give him a shot. See, Paul. Oh wow. Okay, so I'm gonna subscribe. Thank you for catching this, Tony. He's definitely Indian. I recognize that. This is really interesting. Or I should say South Asian. He might be Bangladeshi, but yeah, I mean, he's going to a lot of off the beaten path places, a lot of places that most people would not go to. I need to watch some of this. Thank you for all these tips, Tony. You're catching these vloggers like I wouldn't be able to find on my own. And that's the beauty of social media, is these rapid connections that you can make to people that you really get along with, people that can teach you a lot, share a lot with you. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. But I am probably going to start winding down here in the next, I would say 10 minutes, Tony, as my voice is starting to go a little bit. It's been such a great live stream with you and with Christopher as well, who joined earlier. It's so much fun to be able to do these with everybody. I think I'm going to order some dinner and eat, and then, I need to book my flight, and that's the goals for tonight. But any weekend plans, Tony? We're here on Friday. I'm curious if you have any plans this weekend, or what you have going on. Tony says, how many Americans going to Roma Norte and La Condesa do we need to see? Let's see real working class neighborhoods and living in smaller rural villages. Yeah, I agree with that, Tony. I mean, easy mode is like fine, but I'm almost more interested to see videos of like LA or New York City or Chicago or Toronto than I am La Condesa or Roma Norte, because I don't know, like I can relate more to the people living in LA or New York or Chicago than I can, somebody that is treating Mexico City like a playground, right? Like there's not as many people, Americans, that are actually working and have to have a normal day-to-day life. Whereas if you go to these villages, these lesser known places, you are seeing more. It's like in the United States or like in Canada, going to like a smaller town or a smaller city, you're going to meet very different people than you would meet in a Vancouver or a Toronto, maybe a Montreal. Nothing wrong with those big cities, but you're going to get a different sense of what life is like there. You may get more exposure to local culture, right? Because in the fancy neighborhoods, they're almost always international. They're almost always catering to an international crowd, because the majority of people in these countries cannot afford to be in those neighborhoods. Just the cost to get there, right? Most people do not have the finances to go fly there, to book a $100 a night hotel in the city center, to eat at the fancy sushi restaurant. And so you see, it's almost like when you go to or you see the more small towns or rural areas, you see people you might be able to relate to better. I didn't grow up in a big city. I grew up in Nashville. And I at times relate more to those working class people, more of those small town people that may have big city dreams, but that are making the best of the opportunities they have at hand, that opportunities that may not exist there, that we are fortunate to have in the Western democracies, historically speaking, right? I mean, it's very common in the big cities and the United States, probably Canada as well. to meet people from other places that have come there just to work hard and to try to get ahead. But in some countries it's harder to do that, right? Like it's harder to get the requisite education. It's harder to make the connections. It's just a much steeper climb. And there are people that accept that they're not going to be able to make that climb and are going to give it their all anyway and deserve respect and appreciation for doing things without the aid of as much of certain conveniences. I mean, seeing people that do their laundry by hand, seeing people that have to prepare their own meat or grow their own vegetables, things that we don't have to do in the big cities in the Western democracies. The first time I ever washed clothes by hands was here in Thailand, where I was living in Krabi. I was not very close to a laundromat. And so my roommate in Krabi, he's actually washing his clothes by hand. I'm like, wow, I'm so privileged, just like in some ways, that I didn't know this was the thing that people are still doing. And it gives you a greater sense of gratitude, right? Like the fire movement, it doesn't seem to exist as much outside of the Western democracies. And I think that's for good reason. I think we have to have some humility when we are traveling to appreciate the amount of work that goes into making these places that we like to go to work so well. I learned some about that, just in Cusco, talking to tour guides and talking to people about like the work that goes into the cuisine, right? And like seeing construction sites and you see construction sites here in Thailand, people are using machinery, but there's some things people are doing by hand, and like in the Philippines, my buddy was explaining to me, I buy construction materials with each paycheck. And so I'm building my house slowly but surely, but it's not an overnight process where I go stay in a nice rented house and these guys come to my house, the construction site, and do everything. And I supervise a little bit and go back to my office job. He's like, no, I'm doing this by hand. I'm literally putting this house together brick by brick. And it's definitely humbling. It's definitely humbling. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining the stream. I really appreciate you, Tony, Chris, Christopher, also Solo Transient, for chiming in. Anybody watching this in the rerun, thank you as well for supporting the channel. Feel free to join in. I know I don't announce these. I'm not the best at that. I'm still confused a little bit by the interface, but yeah, comment down below any plans to travel in the next year or so. Anything you're looking forward to? Is there anything, like, have you been to Da Nang or Vietnam? Is there anything I should check out? Do you recommend? But yeah, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and a safe weekend, a relaxing weekend, and yeah, safe travels. And I look forward to seeing everybody again soon. All right. Bye-bye.